Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another whiskey review. And today's review, I am quite excited about. If you go back into this channel and you watch the very first recorded content that wasn't alive of this channel, it was me talking about the first batch of this release. At the time in 2022, it was my whiskey of the year. It ended as my whiskey of the year, and it ended as my rye of the year. And the entire premise of that first video was praying and hoping that more people would get into this so that New Riff would release this again. So, what are we talking about today? We are going to be talking about batch 2 of the New Riff malted rye that was finished in sherry barrels. Oh, I'm so excited to get to taste this again. I already kind of know where this review is going, but the fact that I get to pour a little bit more of this and enjoy it with you is going to be a highlight of the day. So, thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. Ooh, I probably did a little too much on that one, so I will be enjoying that far after this review. But what we have here, had to pull out the fancy stemware on this one. We have the New Riff Malted Sherry Rye. As I mentioned off the top, this was one of my favorite releases of 2022. Didn't know if New Riff would release it again. I was hoping and I was praying. Last year, they did come out with an 8-year cast strength malted rye. But no word on the sherry. And then all of a sudden there was a surprise email like, hey, come to the distillery tomorrow and maybe you'll find this. I was like, gosh darn it, I'm out of town this weekend. Of all times for them to do it. So missed out on the initial drop. Lucky for me, they put some more out at the gift shop about a week later. I was stalking that place, just hoping they put out a bit more, and really glad people kind of worked with me and told me when it was coming. Oh, they didn't tell me exactly when it was coming, but they gave me some tips. Now, with this release and New Riff in general, New Riff has had one heck of a good year, dating all the way back to what was the release of a cast strength wheated bourbon and a cast strength 8-year malted rye, as I mentioned. That was the special releases last fall. They have been on a killer track ever since, particularly this year with the release of the 8-year bourbon, the 8-year rye. Now we got this release with the malted rye finished in sherry. And they had the headliner release in the middle of that. And I got to try a 6-year single barrel rye, which is the oldest single barrel that I know of in existence coming from New Riff. All great. All great. Their distillate is on such a good trajectory right now. I can't wait till it gets older and older. One of those distilleries that I'm most excited about, though I know other people, I don't know, waned on New Riff a little bit. Maybe the 4-year age statements for 5 years in a row just weighed on people, and it was just kind of the same thing as how they felt. I don't know. But I really need to shout from the rooftop that New Riff is on a hot streak, and you should be checking out their stuff. Starting with this one. Now, let me pull up the stats here. This cost $70 at the gift shop, but what was really weird about that weekend, on that email, they even say available in the gift shop, but will also be available nationally at your locals or distributed online. So keep an eye out for this. That makes me think that it's a bigger release than it was with batch 1. And somehow Kelsey got it all the way in Arkansas before I was able to get it in my own backyard. Goes to show you that it's floating around there, but I was like, darn you, you're tasting it before I did. Now, it's 111.5 proof, age stated at 6 years on the back. It looks identical to batch 1 other than the proof. The batch 1 was just a little proofier. I think it was like 113, but that's it. Otherwise, I really can't even tell the difference between these two bottles. So let's go through the nose, the palate, into the finish, and then we'll get into the final scores. Thank you for joining, everybody. I'm going to have a lot of smiles. Let's get into this thing. I love this pour. Oh, geez. Now, for the record, if you're new to the channel or you haven't seen me review anything that sherry finished, sherry finishes are my favorite finishes. For some reason, I can never distinguish sherry blind, even though it's my favorite. but it makes me smile every time. I should just know if it makes me smile. Maybe it's sherry. But dark, sherry, and smoky on the nose, which is surprising. There's quite a bit of fruits as well, and there's gonna be fruits throughout this whole thing, but it's this combination of, blood orange and maybe like a raspberry reduction would be the 2 things that really come into mind. There's also a whole lot of vanilla sweet frosting around this thing. I mentioned the smokiness, that comes with a ton of barrel char. There's a little bit of chocolate there too. So, whole bunch of fun flavors going on, but it is definitely dominated by the sherry finish. So, when it comes to the nose on this one, oh, so for me, thumbs up, almost gave it 2 thumbs up, but going with just a thumbs up on this one. Let's get into the taste. Mm. Oh my gosh, it's hitting so hard today. Up front, berries galore. I mean, that raspberry reduction that I was talking about on the nose, it almost turns into what I would try to articulate as the inside of a Pop Tart, a strawberry Pop Tart, even just that type of layered cream or jelly, whatever you would call that. That's kind of like what I get up front from this thing when I'm talking about the berries. Loads of that barrel char. It's almost over the top when it comes to the barrel char, and that's going to play in later because that smokiness comes back as well. Fantastic mouthfeel throughout this whole thing, too. I mean, this thing is just oily as heck, and you feel every bit of that stick to your palate, the sides of your mouth, the sides of your tongue, all the above. All right, let's get into the mid palate here. Sherry, sherry blast mid palate. I mean, I can't think about much other than just this blast of sherry. It's been finished in sherry for quite a bit. That smokiness definitely reemerges mid palate with a whole lot of that barrel char with the smokiness. And generally, the flavors are going to be centered around the blood orange that I've been talking about all along. That's something that I get on numerous malted rye, even in general. And yeah, it's just got this nice, lovely spiciness, the rye spice, baking spices, all the above start shining through. But man, does the sherry dominate mid palate. And it's dark. It is real dark leaning. So when it comes to the palate, once again, gave this one thumbs up. Uh, really, really good, really fun experience. Lots of flavor going on. Very, very dark, especially with that barrel char and that smokiness. Now let's get into the finish. For the most part, there's not a transition on this one. The flavors from mid palate simply play through the finish. So we're still talking about the blood orange, still talking about the smokiness, still talking about that raspberry or strawberry cream from that Pop Tart filling. Not the Pop Tart itself, just that middle cream part. Um, gosh, I think that's all I'm calling out. There's nothing. I mean, and then you get left with that barrel char and the smokiness. I think I mentioned that, but that continues to weigh through. And it is darker than batch one was. We'll get into that in just a moment. So when it comes to the finish here, 2 thumbs up. I love the finish on this. Like it all comes together, it all escalates, it blooms. It doesn't have that transition point, but still all the flavors that are there. Man, I love it. All right, one more sip. Let's see if I find anything else. Oh man, got a huge sherry bomb on that sip. So good. So good. Hold that though. We're going to do something in just a moment. So stick around. We're going to go through the final scores, but I do have something else to say about this one. A tip from Dustin over there at Top Shelf Whiskey. So on this one, in the end, flavor score of a 82.5, experience score at an 84, value score, all the points, 100. I'm going to keep buying this thing. I love it. I'll keep buying it at 70. Absolutely no qualms on paying 70 for this. Whole bunch of metrics go behind the scenes on all these scores, by the way. This is just a good way to summarize them. But all in all, then we get to average all of the metrics that we have on the channel, get that final score, which on this one is an 85 out of 100. Now, the first batch scored in the 90s for me. So while it's a step down from the first batch, I mean, my expectations were so elevated based off of what happened to that first batch. This is still absolutely delicious. As you can tell from the 85, ranks 13 out of 54. So I do love this, but it's not going to be my rye of the year like the first batch. We'll see if I'm able to sneak this one into our end of year tournament this year. All time, 53 out of 213 reviews that I have done. So fun stuff. Great pour. Love it. Now, it does feel tight and it does feel overly dark, and it gets dominated by a lot of that barrel char and that smokiness that I was talking about. That is not on batch one. Batch one is vibrant and bright and it just comes at you. Now, friend over there at Top Shelf Whiskey, Dustin, was like, he's obsessed with it too, and he loves New Riff just as much as I do. Him and I have text threads of just talking about New Riff. He was like, Jeff, what do you think? I need to hear your thoughts before I tell you anything. And I told him my thoughts and love it, but not as much as the first batch. And he was like, put drop of water in it and it blooms. Never done this before on the channel. I do not experiment with water that often, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a couple drops of water in. If you've got this bottle, I recommend the same thing. So I'm going to do just about 3 drops there. I was trying to be precise. I'm just going to swirl it a little bit. I won't agitate it too much, but I just wanted to release there. This thing with a few drops of water blooms. It always makes me wonder, like, was it something about the proof point? Could they have found this spot? Why did they settle on the, 111.5 proof? Could 111 proof exactly been the sweet spot? It is crazy to think about those type of experiments. But let me do a quick comparison here. Yeah, just a few drops of water actually neutralizes a lot of the overbearing sherry and the barrel char and the smokiness that comes through. Now, that might be a note that you're liking, but it makes it more vibrant, even on the nose immediately with a drop of water. All right, let's go on the palate, and then we'll wrap this thing up. It's a better pour with a few drops of water. Now, I do find that smokiness and that char interesting. Don't get me wrong, but something about 3 drops of water in essentially a 1 ounce pour makes all of the fruits throughout the entire process bloom and explode. Oh, it is so good. I think it would actually legitimately score higher with 3 drops of water. I even debated doing that. Like, that just blows my mind a little bit. But do I need to start categorizing that on a review sheet? Like, here's what it scores with 3 drops of water or something. I think this would get up there for like an 87 or 88, though. Like, it's a substantial improvement. All right, last sip. Substantial improvement. It's so good. It is so good with some water. So thank you, New Riff. Thank you so much for paying attention to my very first video and coming out with another batch of it. I am sure I influenced that whole thing. It was just, all coming from Hello Again Whiskey Friends. Certain of it. But if you have the chance, get this one too. One of the best releases that New Riff does. And I really hope that this means it's going to come out more and more, but need to spread the word and need to get other people to buy it so that I can keep buying it for years to come. So thank you for joining today, Whiskey Friends, on this whiskey review. We'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, buddy. Ooh, can't find my mouse. There we go.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello